So there's a lot of information I've acquired on trust. Not going to be able to do all of it in one video because I don't want a 30-minute to an hour video. So we're going to start with entering the trust, and I'll read you what I've learned so far. So a trust is a common legal entity created to hold and manage assets on behalf of a named beneficiary. A trust creator is called a grantor, may be the beneficiary, or the grantor may name others to receive the assets. When a grantor puts assets into a trust, the trust, not the guarantor, owns those assets. This effectively removes them from the grantor's estate. Now, a trust is versatile. An individual can set up a trust during their life. That's a living trust or an inter vivos trust, or through a will at death, a testamentary trust. You can be revocable or irrevocable. It has to meet important needs and planning for minor children, spendthrift heirs, retirement, tax minimization, or charitable giving. Now, of course, this particular trust needs to be drafted by an attorney. We can try to do it ourselves, but you might miss some all states have different laws, and you want to make sure you are doing everything you're supposed to do lawfully to make sure everyone is taken care of and no one is left out. So, as a financial professional, of course, they have to know what the trust is, become familiar with the major types of trust, and understand how the individual can use life insurance with the trust to accomplish estate planning goals. Now, drafting the trust document based on the grantor's objective, the attorney will draft a trust that addresses these questions. The questions are: who will receive the trust income? How long will the income payments or accumulation of income last? Who will receive distribution of the principal? When will the distribution be paid? And one that a lot of people did not know: when will the trust terminate? And if the beneficiary does not know that, that can mess up the wealth for generations to come, because trusts expire. Now, planning beyond, because some people use a will, but a will is not always enough, especially if the will is not strategically done where it rolls over or spills over so everyone is accessible to getting what they need to get. Now, there is where the trust is, of course, the trust is more expensive than writing a will, but the trust offers benefits that a will does not do. Now, a trust can provide professional property management, reduce taxes, transfer assets easily at death, provide flexibility in disposing of assets, avoid probate, which minimizes costs and delays, and protect privacy. Unlike a will, a trust is not open to public scrutiny. Now, there is a testamentary trust versus a living trust. A testamentary trust is established by a will. When the grantor dies, the will goes through probate. The trust becomes effective, and the designated assets are transferred to the trustee. A living trust, as the name applies, is established during the grantor's life. At the grantor's death, the trust assets avoid probate and are distributed directly to the named beneficiaries according to the trust terms. Now, you also have revocable trusts, and they provide flexibility. The revocable trust gives the grantor plenty of freedom. They can change the trust provisions, sell, spend, or give away trust assets, revoke the trust, reclaim outright ownership of the trust property. Now, they can change the trust provisions. The grantor can simply instruct the attorney to prepare a written amendment to the trust at any time without tax or other penalties. The ability to reclaim trust property provides added security for the individuals who are concerned about not having access to the assets future emergency. So these are really good things to think about when you're deciding which type of trust you want and how much control you want to still have after things go into the trust, or if you want someone else to completely take over everything. It's a lot to think of, but this is a lot of really good information that'll help you get to where you want to be. Now, the revocable trust, it cannot be changed. It requires a grantor to give up all control of the assets with no opportunity to make changes in the future. The grantor transfers assets to the trust. The transfer is treated like a gift, and the assets are subject to federal gift tax. In exchange, the grantor receives an exemption from federal estate taxes. Now, the gift tax, of course, is much cheaper than the estate tax is. Now, this works out well for grantors who wish to give assets to children and grandchildren while minimizing taxes. Now, managing the assets in a trust. Every trust needs a trustee, someone to manage the assets for the benefit of the beneficiaries. The grantor names the trustee. When the grantor chooses to serve as a trustee, the grantor retains full control over trust assets, especially in the case of a revocable living trust, where the grantor has the option to make changes or to add or remove assets. In many cases, the grantor chooses someone else to serve as a trustee. Now, selecting a trustee is another game changer. You want to select someone intelligent and trustworthy, someone with financial experience and good relationship with the beneficiary. The grantor must decide whether to name a family member, a professional, a bank, or trust company. Those are really big decisions, and you can't base them on emotions because money changes people, unfortunately. Then a revocable living trust. This estate owners decide to use a revocable living trust as a substitute for a will. A revocable living trust accomplishes important estate planning objectives by avoiding probate, publicity, and expenses for assets in the trust. Now, it allows the grantor to retain rights to the trust during their life. It ensures the assets in the trust are eventually distributed according to the grantor's wishes. Note that a revocable trust is not a complete substitution for a will, since it doesn't provide for issues such as estate administration or guardianship over minor children. Now, how does the revocable living trust work? The key word is flexibility. During the grantor's life, the grantor can alter or revoke the trust, or add or remove assets. When the grantor dies, the trust becomes irrevocable. Now, that's a really cool little part I didn't know. Now, again, once the grantor dies, the revocable trust becomes irrevocable, and the assets are distributed according to the grantor's wishes. Now, because the trust removes assets from the estate, those assets avoid probate. Generally, each state has its own probate law, so the trusts are used more extensively in some states than in others. Now, an estate owner can also choose to create a testamentary trust, and please forgive me if I'm not saying that correctly, which comes into effect at the grantor's death and is funded by life insurance proceeds or a bequest. Now, you're going to have to watch this again, and you may want to send this video to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT can actually type it up for you, so you'll have all the information up front. Let's continue. I'm not going to let this go over 15 minutes. Once we get to 15 minutes, I'll just go to another video, okay? All right, so the Revocable Life Insurance Trust. Now, individually owned life insurance faces exposure to creditors during the owner's life and estate taxes at death. And irrevocable life insurance trust, also ILIT, keeps life insurance out of reach of creditors and keeps the proceeds out of the estate. Now that's why you hear a lot of people telling you now, don't name your kids or family members as your beneficiary, because if they have any credit issues or owe anyone, they'll snatch it before they even see the proceeds from the life insurance policy. Sounds horrible, doesn't it? But yeah, because it's not in a trust and you've put it on in someone else's name, the creditors can pull that money from the beneficiary before they even get to see it. Now, a revocable life insurance trust keeps life insurance, again, out of reach of creditors and keeps the proceeds out of the estate. It provides estate liquidity, avoid exposure to taxation, supply income to survivors, and protects trust assets from creditors. Those are big reasons to get a revocable trust. Now, how does this irrevocable trust, life insurance trust, works? The grantor creates the irrevocable life insurance trust during life. The grantor funds, I'm going to say the short version, ILIT, with a life insurance policy on the grantor's life. It may be an existing policy that the grantor gives to the trust, or a new policy purchased by the trustee using cash that the grantor transfers to the trust for that purpose. The grantor cannot be the trustee of an ILIT. ILIT is irrevocable life insurance trust. Now, the trust documents authorize the trustee to make the proceeds available to the executor upon the grantor's death by purchasing illiquid assets from the estate for a fair price, and or making loans to the estate at a reasonable interest rate with a set repayment schedule using estate assets as collateral. Either way, cash flows into the estate when it is needed most, but it is important that the trustee is only authorized to make the proceeds available. Requiring the trustee to do so would make the proceeds includable in the estate, defeating the purpose of the trust. Now, I'm going to say that again. It is important that the trustee is only authorized to make the proceeds available. Requiring the trustee to do so will make the proceeds includable in the estate, defeating the purpose of the trust. So you have to make sure it's set up properly, because if it does not, it can still end up going into the estate, and that defeats the whole purpose of having a trust. Your trust is to keep it out of probate, keep it out of the estate, keep it away from creditors. But if it's not set up properly, it could go the wrong way. Now, there are different ways of paying the premiums. The grantor usually gives the trustee discretion to pay premiums on the policy. This is accomplished differently depending on whether the ILIT is funded or unfunded. Now, this is how the funding works. The grantor transfers a life insurance policy to the trust. The grantor also transfers cash, securities, and other assets. The trustee can use these other assets to pay insurance premiums. The drawback: trust income may be taxed to the grantor if the trust can use the assets to pay premiums. Now I'm going to stop there. I'll do a part 2. Take this information in. It's very useful. I know I have been looking for this information online for a while and we're not able to find it. So I'm happy that I went on and took this class because it's very informative. So until next time, later.